Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really jumping into the fast-moving world of cryptocurrency. It's always changing, always something new, right? And for this deep dive, we've got one mission, cut through all that noise. We've looked at a whole stack of recent sources. You gave us articles, notes, the works. We want to pull out the really crucial bits, the goal, give you a solid handle on what's driving the market, the big policy changes, and those important legal fights shaping crypto's future, help you get up to speed quickly and clearly.
Exactly. We'll be covering quite a range,
Yeah.
from those headline-grabbing market highs
Yeah.
all the way to the maybe less flashy but super important regulatory shifts. And yes, those court decisions, they could really set the tone going forward. It's about seeing how these pieces fit together. They paint a much bigger picture of the whole crypto ecosystem.
All right, so let's kick things off with the market action. It's been pretty wild. Ethereum, for example, it just blew past $4,000. That's a, 26% rally? Pretty stunning.
Yeah, quite a surge.
And our sources, places like Cointelegraph, the Economic Times, they're pointing to a couple of things. A wave of leveraged liquidations and that classic retail FOMO, fear of missing out.
Mm-hmm.
What's your read on that? How much did those factors really, juice this rally? What does it tell us?
Well, what's really insightful here, I think, isn't just that it happened, but what it signals about the market. It shows it's increasingly prone to these really dramatic swings, often driven by liquidity, those leveraged liquidations. They can cause these explosive short-term pumps, right? Shorts get squeezed, have to buy back. But the underlying point is maybe this surge was more about market mechanics amplifying sentiment rather than, say, broad organic demand.
Okay, so mechanics over fundamentals, maybe.
In part, perhaps.
Yeah.
And when you add that retail FOMO on top, well, that often suggests things are getting a bit frothy, riding a wave of emotion, which, can lead to some pretty sharp swings up and down. Makes you question the staying power of such a rapid climb.
That's a great point, sustainability. And this is where it gets really interesting comparing ETH to Bitcoin.
Right, because while, as some sources put it, altcoins were partying harder, Bitcoin, well, it hit a new 10-day high, over $118,000, according to CoinSpeaker and others.
Yes, it did edge up.
But the description was very different, a steady, unflashy climb, playing the long game. So, given all that altcoin excitement, is Bitcoin's stability just, relative? I mean, isn't it still fundamentally speculative too? Vulnerable to the same stuff? How do we square that digital gold idea with its own history of volatility?
That's a really crucial question. Because what's genuinely maybe surprising here, given the overall speculative feel, is how Bitcoin's quieter climb might actually signal something deeper. The sources suggest it highlights a subtle shift. Bitcoin is volatile, no doubt, but its current behavior, this steadier movement, it could suggest that some of the bigger players, institutional money perhaps, are leaning more into that digital gold narrative, less about the quick flip, more about long-term store of value.
So it indicates maybe a different kind of investor base focusing on Bitcoin now, focus more on capital preservation than chasing those huge fast gains we saw with ETH. Doesn't mean it's immune to speculation, not at all.
Yeah.
But the drivers seem to be evolving, differentiating it from that ETH rally.
Fascinating distinction. So as you think about these different paths, these contrasting moves, what does that suggest to you about crypto investing right now? Are we seeing different assets mature in different ways? Okay, let's shift gears now. Moving from the market's ups and downs to a policy change that could be, massive. We're hearing a lot about crypto finding its way into traditional 401k retirement accounts.
Yes, that's been a big topic.
And the sources we looked at, the Times of India, The Guardian, Crypto Slate, they point to Trump's executive order as a key catalyst here, basically cracking open that huge, $12 trillion retirement pot, potentially, to crypto.
That's a staggering amount of money.
And the way the sources frame it is pretty stark. Big risk, big reward, or big scandal. Setting aside the politics, just focusing on the substance, this feels huge. What's the biggest risk you see here? Maybe one that's a bit underestimated.
Well, connecting this to the broader picture, getting crypto into 401k is a major step toward mainstream acceptance. But the underestimated risk, I think it's not just the obvious volatility. We all know crypto swings wildly.
Right.
It's more about the potential for widespread investor complacency. 401ks are traditionally set it and forget it for many people. They trust the managers.
Hmm.
So you introduce this highly volatile, very different asset class, even in small bits, without enough investor education. You could be exposing millions to risks they just don't understand, and that could seriously impact their retirement security down the road. It
Hmm.
kind of challenges the whole conservative foundation of retirement planning.
That's a really sobering thought. So this policy change isn't just abstract numbers, it has real implications. Think about it. How might this reshape your own financial planning or just how you view digital assets fitting into a normal portfolio? Okay, and finally, as the market evolves, as policy shifts, we also have the legal side really heating up. Let's get into some key court decisions.
Absolutely critical area.
First, Ripple, that big court showdown. Sources like Wired, Cointelegraph confirm it ended with a $125 million fine.
A hefty sum.
The takeaway seems to be XRP lives to fight another day, but the legal bruise is real. So Ripple didn't get labeled a security across the board for all its sales, which is a win, sort of.
A partial win, yeah.
But that $125 million fine, that's not small change. How does this really affect other crypto projects? Does it clear things up or just make the regulatory waters even murkier?
Yeah, this raises a really important question. The nuance is key here. Because while it looks like a partial victory for Ripple, avoiding the worst-case scenario, that big fine, it sends a very loud message that regulators are serious. They're willing and able to impose major penalties even if a project doesn't totally lose in court. So it doesn't exactly create a nice, clear roadmap. What it does create is a strong incentive for projects to get proactive about compliance. Try and settle.
Ah, okay. Avoid the fight if possible.
Exactly. It suggests more projects might choose to settle rather than risk these long, expensive legal battles. And that, in turn, influences how they structure things, how they raise money, how they talk to the public. It's a costly lesson for sure.
Definitely a costly lesson. Okay, then there's the Tornado Cash developer verdict, kind of being called the Storms verdict.
Yes, that one's generated a lot of discussion.
Business Insider reported the developer was found guilty on one count, got a suspended sentence. And the core tension here, according to the sources, is privacy versus prosecution. It really sparks this debate about the slippery slope of developer liability. This verdict is complex. What's really fascinating is how it might set a precedent.
It really could.
Does this mean any developer, whose tool could be misused for bad stuff is now potentially on the hook? Or is it more nuanced than that?
Well, what's fascinating is the tightrope walk the verdict seems to be attempting. It directly tackles that huge question. What's the responsibility of developers creating open source tools that, yes, can be misused? On one hand, the conviction itself, even with the sentence suspended, signals a push towards more accountability.
Right.
It suggests just creating the tool isn't always enough cover if you maybe knowingly facilitated illegal use, even indirectly. But then the suspended sentence that hints the court recognizes the complexity. Developers don't control every user, especially with open source code.
It's a tricky balance.
Very tricky and creates this challenging precedent. Developers now have to really weigh the potential for misuse against pushing for privacy and decentralization. It'll definitely influence how future privacy tools are designed and rolled out. It's a gray area, a really gray area the industry is going to grapple with for years.
Absolutely. It makes you think, doesn't it? When you consider these legal results, how does it shift your view on crypto's future? That constant tension between innovation, financial privacy, and increasing regulation. It's certainly a lot to process.
Wow, what an incredible deep dive today. We really covered some ground. From the highs of ETH and Bitcoin's steady moves to crypto potentially entering 401ks, huge deal there, and then digging into these really significant legal outcomes for Ripple and the Tornado Cash developer. It really shows how these things aren't happening in isolation, right? Market moves, policy changes, court rulings, they're all connected, all shaping crypto's foundation. Indeed. It's been a period of really intense activity, and these developments are setting the stage, defining the boundaries for how crypto grows and integrates into, well, everything else. And it leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? As we see these huge market surges alongside these major legal precedents, how do you think the industry will manage that balancing act? Balancing that relentless push for innovation against the growing calls for regulation, for accountability in the years ahead. What compromises might we see? And maybe who ultimately pays the price for finding that balance? Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive.